Coming up this week on the Dish Lifestyle Show 790, Garry and Richard are here, and we've got lots to talk about. We've got Windows Insider News. I've got a new monitor and got lots of new things actually they've been playing with this week, so I'm telling you about that. The Windows 10X. We'll be looking back at some retro computing news as well, and we're talking about EVs as well. So we've got lots of things to get to, so let's get straight to Richard and Garry. Richard and Garry, good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
And so, Richard, where have you got us set up tonight?
Well, I've made the schoolboy error of basically moving my gaming rig into a different part of the house, and so I'm on that. And so you're currently talking to me from the projector. I can see your giant 3-meter wide head staring at me. It's quite alarming, actually. I'm going to send you a picture of what it looks like.
That sounds really scary.
Yeah, please do. I can.
Don't do that. That's quite frightening.
Yeah, exactly. You're on my normal monitor tonight, but I've got a new monitor. I did say I'm going to get a new monitor, so I've got a new monitor, so we can talk about that. I'm also having a look at a nice healthy colour tonight. But that's because I've got one of those light rings that I'm testing.
Ah, I thought you looked more human today.
Oh, thank you. So this is me without light ring, and this is me with the light ring on. So, and it's got different warmths and temperatures on it, so I can have it as white and all the different ones. So I'll give it the one that gives me a nice tan look. Not that I'm getting much natural sunlight at the moment, anyway.
No. I mean, there is this mysterious glowing orb in the sky we hear every now and again, but not seen it for a while.
Yeah. Oh, your picture's just arrived. Let me have a look at that, and I'm going to put that on my. Oh dear, let me share the screen, and then I can share it for the video viewers on there. Well, that does look frightening. Yeah, that definitely does look frightening.
Scary.
Yeah, I'll stop sharing that straight away. I don't want to put people off. Well, good evening. So yeah, we've got lots of things to talk about tonight. There's not a huge lot of Microsoft news, but there's some other things that we wanted to talk about. I might as well talk about monitor then. I was threatening to get a new monitor, so I did actually get one. So I've got a Samsung 28-inch 4K monitor, and I have to say I'm pretty impressed with it so far, especially combined with Fancy Zones, which we talked about last week. When you get it combined with that, you can drag it, you can sort of zone the screen quite nicely there and you hold down Shift while you're dragging them around, and that works really well. Actually, I'll share some pictures of that as well. So it's a really nice clear monitor. It's 4K. So that's giving you and the Surface laptop and my work machine as well. They all put out the 4K. So it's 3840 by 2160. What I did find as well for the Surface to work properly with it, which I guess the Surface has got the mini display port on it, which I use for the dock, and I have one of these old. Which I'm going to get around here somewhere. But I have one of the mini display port to HDMI adapters, and I was only getting 30 hertz. But then when I bought the monitor, I also got another one of those cables because I thought I might need a spare. So, and I tried that. That worked at 60 hertz. So it looks like those cables are not all the same. And I guess mine's 5 or 6 years old. So if you're having issues with 4K monitors, you check, and from things like the Surface, then check that connector. But yeah, it works really well. But one interesting thing you can do with it is you can do split screen on it it'll do. I don't know how many. I haven't had a new monitor for ages, so I don't know whether they all do this now or not. But if you got on HDMI 1 and HDMI 2 or DisplayPort, you can have 2 different inputs. So you can split it down the middle and have maybe a Surface on one and the Dell on the other, or vice versa. Or you can have it as picture-in-picture, little in the corner, that kind of thing as well. Cool. But it works really well. So, but Fancy Zones makes it a lot easier to use. And I tell you what, I like I use Edge with the tabs down the side not on this one I'm sharing now, but normally I use Edge with my Edge. I use the dev version of Edge, or the Canary one, and I use the tabs down the side. And of course, if you go use the tabs, you can, because it's got so much screen estate, you can pin the tab bar down the left hand side as well. So it makes it really easy switching tabs as well. So I do like that. So that's working. So it's working quite well with the monitor. It's nice and clear and sharp, and good picture. So going from, I can't remember, it was 1920 my other monitor, something like that, where I was constantly switching applications. Going to the 4K has meant I can zone them, and you have a server there and another server there and that kind of thing. So I think that I found it really good. So it's not cheap. It was 297. I actually don't really, they're all around that price, but I suppose for a 4K monitor it's relatively cheap, because things have come down in price since I looked at it a couple of years ago. But anyway, so get yourself a new monitor, then this is definitely a good one to look at, and it doesn't take up a lot of footprint as well, which is the main thing. I don't want to fill the desk, but using things like Teams and things like that doesn't make much difference. But when you're using some of the music production software that I've been using, that really makes a massive difference, because you can get so much more information on the screen at once. So you've got the MIDI editor and the key editor and everything on the screen at once. So I thought that was good as well. And it works okay for games, for millisecond response time. So Forza Horizon works quite well on that. My gaming laptop drives that okay. So yeah, it looks all right. So I'm quite impressed with that. So that's my purchase for this year so far, my big purchase for this year. And I think hopefully it'll last me a while.
Well done.
So and the other thing I've got is testing this light ring, which I think is quite good as well. So I'm looking nice and bright now.
It's taken years off you.
Yeah, that's right. Thanks, Richard. I wish I could take that as a compliment. I'm not sure I should.
Exactly. Not a day over 60 now. It's fantastic.
Yeah, thanks very much. Okay, so what else have we got? I'm going to talk about. What else? Like I said, the other thing that I bought this week. You remember when I talked about the Surface Duo, and I got those magnetic charging cables, but it didn't work very well because it was too big. Well, I managed to find one that's small.
Oh, yeah.
So that works really well now. So I've got where I charge the Surface at night when I go to bed, it just magnetically clips in. I've got one in the car and I've got one on my desk here. So I just clip it straight in. It's not like the other one, the round one where you can kind of have any up direction, but this just is either sort of left or right, but it doesn't matter, which way. It just clips in and it's magnetic. And got the other end of it somewhere around here. But it works really well, actually. So that was another good buy that I've had this week. So where's it gone? Let's show the other end. There we go. So yeah, it just kind of, it lights up green when it's in, and it just snaps on nice and easy, snaps off. So no pressure on the port, and especially for in the car and that kind of stuff, just clip it straight in. So not that I'm been going very far this week, but the last few weeks. But yeah, that's another good. So I got a new monitor, a new display adapter cable, and a power charging cable. So that's my budget blown for now. It's only February. Okay, so have you got anything new playing around with?
I've been playing around with I think I've mentioned this before, but the Sonoff our Web to RF hub. I can't remember what they actually call it, but it's a really cheap device. It's a tiny little square device, fits in your palm of your hand almost, and it allows you to blast 433 megahertz RF signals off to things like Lightwave RF and the old Home Easy sockets. Remember them? Bye Standby. Remember having them on the show?
I do remember them.
Many years ago. So if you've got any of this old stuff and you wonder how to control it, or anything which used 433, so some garage doors which use fixed codes. I mean, it doesn't work with rolling codes because it doesn't handle that sort of level of security. But fixed code stuff, it will allow you to learn the code and then retransmit it. But the reason I started playing with it is they recently added some new functionality. I think I just lost my microphone. It's come back. Yeah. They've added extra functionality to it now, so it works with IFTTT and also SmartThings. So if you're a SmartThings user, and if a Samsung phone, you probably are a SmartThings user now, because you don't actually need a hub to do some of this stuff anymore because it's all cloud-based smart things. I think eventually they'll probably go to a subscription model, but it used to be a hardware-based product, but now it's virtually all in the cloud software. So you can actually get smart things to talk to this little device from Sonoff and actually control old legacy devices. So I'm sort of having a look at that to see if it's an alternative to using the domotics approach. Now I've moved and I'm redoing the whole smart home anyway, so it makes sense to modernise and have a look at some of the stuff. But I've still got some legacy stuff I want to use and things like the curtain controls and stuff. So it makes sense to be able to do it, and it's a really cheap option. I've seen them as low as 10 quid on eBay. So
Right. So that just like pushes it through out in the way that you would have used a Raspberry Pi or something.
Yeah. I mean, basically, you just use the device itself and not have to. I mean, in the past, people have used this device, but they've had to hack it to some extent by putting a firmware on it called Tasmoto, which is a firmware which works with a lot of these Wi-Fi based devices. Most of these Wi-Fi devices are based on the SP826 or 826 chipset, which is very common across things. And the Shelly devices I mentioned a few weeks ago use it as well. And there's this Tasmoto firmware you can flash onto all of them, which is then compatible with a lot of this stuff. But this now, the RF8 bridge now only needs to be set up on directly onto as long as you've got a Sonoff account and you've got the RF bridge on the Sonoff account. Their app's called EWE Link, EWE Link. If you've got an account for that, you just basically go onto your smart things account and add it in as a device, and it suddenly recognises all the devices you've got recognised, which is really cool. It works well. It's a bit of a pain to learn things on it because you have to learn an on code and an off code, and some devices only have one, which can be a bit fun to organise. But I've been
so it doesn't know which. So if you only got one, it doesn't necessarily know which polarity it's in. Then
it doesn't. Yeah, so you'd have to work it out. But you're just learning code, so it's not that difficult to do it. Well, one thing I have played with this is combining it with one of the Shelly devices to operate as a garage door opener. So you can actually use this to trigger your garage door from your smart home devices, and that then adds to some really interesting possibilities because smart things got all sorts of things like you've got the events you can have with smart things include some location based stuff. So you could have your garage door automatically open as you arrived home.
That's good, yeah.
Intriguing. So there's lots of things you can do. It makes for a nice play. I mean, the Shelly stuff I keep mentioning that there's some really cool stuff amongst their stuff, their switches, which makes for some really general purpose automation, really smart relays and water sensors and the like. And their batteries just last forever. They've got really good battery management on them. Because as you know, in the battery management on these Wi-Fi devices is sometimes a struggle.
Yeah. Yeah, it is, and that's where that switch bot one going brilliant. Still batteries on full, whereas the other one that I had with the 2 AA batteries, I've given up with because it was taking 2 AAs every 2 or 3 weeks, so that's gone now. But the switch bot will last ages, and that's really important because not only the cost of the batteries, but traipsing out to wherever the sensor is, it's okay if it's in a greenhouse, but if you've got it somewhere or wherever, integrated in your garage, you don't want to keep messing about swapping batteries.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing about this RF bridge is it does allow you to do things like have some of the sensors send you messages. I'm not sure how easy it would be to read them, but there are RF sensors out there, and you could the RF sensors tend to have very long battery life because they're quite low powered. But then you can just use the bridge to put them onto your Wi-Fi. Which is quite an easy way of doing it. So lots of things it's very useful for.
Yeah, that sounds good. And I guess when you move, this is a good opportunity to reevaluate your setup and
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there's definitely there's a book to write on moving a smart home from one location to another. It's really difficult to actually reset some of this stuff and get it cleared down, and particularly the Amazon Alexa stuff. That's very tricky to get organised. To especially if you're combining two households into one. That's an absolute nightmare to organise.
Yeah, and I suppose you've got things I haven't thought about it, but like you've got a Hive with your smart home heating. There must be a procedure for switching this from one user to another without
Yeah,
without messing everything up. It's quite a challenge, that, I guess.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and I don't know what the one with Hive is, but certainly some of the stuff I've worked on has been proved very tricky to move devices across to another user. So yeah, that's definitely an interesting. I'm probably working on an article at some point on that.
Yeah, I suppose the other thing you've got to think about with this stuff is probably not the nicest stuff to think about, but is, have you got your significant other or whatever all set up on these devices? So if anything was to happen to you, as a main, you know, that you're not going to leave your family with no heating. I mean, it's not a nice thing to think about, but
it's a very serious thing to do. I mean, technology wills are becoming quite a big thing. That sort of, how do you pass down to inherit technology? It's passwords and logins. I had that problem when my dad passed away. A lot of his stuff was password protected, and no idea what his passwords were, and it became a major issue to move some of that stuff and let its other half have access to it. So yeah, it's certainly something to consider. Yeah.
I get, Richard, while you're doing your refurb, is this a time for you to introduce some of the smart home? Although no, Mrs. Speed's not that keen.
I tried. I failed. I mean, basically, I've got a bunch of old smart plugs and things, which I was amazed to find all work perfectly, having not been used for a very long time. And they're all currently sat in my shed where I work. So I've got a smart shed, not a smart home.
I found one of the gateway things is this water sensor. That seems to go down really well when you can say, look, if you can set it up on the side of the bath or whatever, and someone leaves the tap running and it starts to fill up past a certain line, it will start alerting you. So get flooding. That sort of thing seems to go down quite well. Practical uses.
I think
I'll try.
Yeah, and I think the one thing that when I've mentioned the stuff like the turning on the TV, turning the Xbox, but the Arlo camera, the front door one, is proves popular because if you're out and about and you just want to see if it was the postman or an Amazon delivery or whatever, even if you're in the house, you can have a look, and I think we all use that now to see sort of who's at the door, which is handy these days.
That was something I was going to mention. That voice monkey thing I mentioned last week, the Alexa text-to-speech thing where you can send notifications, works exceedingly well. I actually set it up with one of the water sensors, so if someone does overfill the bath and water comes flying out, it would start shouting all around the house. And because that water sensor is really sensitive, it's going to stop you.
Yeah, those water sensors are quite good. I've got one, and I got to review, and I think it was a TP-Link one. I've left it behind the washing machine, the washing machine, just in case, really. But it's super loud when it goes off as well, and it sends you an alert to your phone as well. So yeah, if you could get that to trigger things as well, that's pretty good.
I quite like the Shelly one because it's got a couple of modes. It's got a rainwater mode, which is really useful. So in which case it won't actually set its alarm off. So if you want to just fill a bath to a certain level, you could have one of these on the side of the bath, stuck on the side of the bath because the battery operated. They're very easy to do that, and it would let you know that you've filled the bath to the right size. I guess you could combine that with some sort of automatic valve to actually shut the bath off when you're filling it. Alexa, fill the bath type thing. So that
is the height of laziness there.
It is. It is.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Yeah, it's always a balancing act between this, the things that make sense and the things that don't. I mean, like I mentioned, I've got a smart plug with the desk here for my synthesizers because I operate them all at the same time. So I just say, turn on desk, and they all come on at the same time, and then I can shut them down afterwards. So it makes sense for things like that. Where otherwise you'd be fiddling around turning on sort of 10 devices or whatever it is. Yeah. I think that's a good idea. What else did we have I wanted to mention? We did have some Windows Insider news this week. Not a huge amount. In fact, we didn't even get a build last week, did we?
No, there was some mystery issue that they stopped them sending it out. They put out a tweet say, sorry, not wanted this week. There's a blocking bug.
Yeah, so we don't know, but we did get a couple of updates for the release preview and the beta channel. In fact, we've had one tonight as we record on Tuesday evening.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's basically isn't this kind of like a patch? Isn't this like a patch Tuesday thing? Yeah. So, although I mean, there were some interesting things in it. Obviously, it's worth always getting this stuff. There's fixes in the Win32K component. But did you guys see the return of an old friend, which was they fixed an issue that might damage the file system of some devices after running checkdisk/f. And I thought, if you're running checkdisk, if you're running checkdisk/f, you've got other problems in your hands right now. You really do.
Yeah, that was always one that was probably guaranteed to break everything anyway. But it wasn't supposed to. But I don't. You don't run that. I don't know what the modern equivalent of that is. DISM, is it? Is that what the tool?
I don't know. Perhaps taking a hammer to your hard disk. I have no idea.
That's more likely.
Yeah. So I mean, obviously, back in the day when we suffered spinning disks with bad sectors, obviously, checkdisk/f would fix things, so at least it might be keep running for a bit longer. But of course, I think once you started using that command to fix things, the disk was probably on the way out. So it was just a bit of a blast from the past seeing it appearing again.
Yeah. Was the it's a bit like wasn't there a visual version of the DOS version of that, a bit like the defrag, where you saw the bits moving around?
Was it ScanDisk or something like that? Was it
ScanDisk? That might be it. Yeah,
I can't remember.
I do remember. You could see it going through chunk after chunk, and it took like a defrag where you could see it, but it took forever.
I found the defrag thing quite soothing, really. Just nice blue screen and watch the blocks just moving themselves around.
Merging them. Oh, fantastic that.
And then that mysterious block that could not be moved. Oh, come on, just do the whole lot, because my OCD wants me to basically everything must be lined up. So
unmovable blocks, they were the key.
Yeah, good old days.
Yeah, good old defrag. In fact, Windows even used to tell you, didn't it, that you needed a defrag?
Yeah, I can remember one of the big things about NTFS was you would never need to defragment your hard disk again. This was one of the early set endpoints. We'll say no more about that.
Yeah, I think so. It's definitely not something you can do anymore with SSDs.
No, oh goodness me, they're a very different beast, aren't they?
Yeah. Oh, good old defrags.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, although that's a bit of a nerd thing. Speaking of SSDs, are you guys aware of the ESA and NASA Solar Heliospheric Observatories, the SOHO probe, that's been watching the sun for the last 25 years? Because that's an interesting example of SSDs, because it was supposed to launch with tapes. And what they did in the end was they changed out one of the tapes for an SSD, because SSDs became cheap enough to use at that point. So they changed one out. And then as the mission progressed, that they found that they needed to because various bits and pieces failed or stopped working, they had to basically switch to a certain way of capturing information that actually only worked with an SSD, because the SSD was set so it behaved exactly like a magnetic tape machine, because the software expected to see a magnetic tape machine there, except of course behind the scenes was the SSD that could amazingly work incredibly fast and do things that a magnetic tape machine shouldn't be able to do. And so the mission was extended because of the swap to an SSD. Just a little nerd fact there.
Yeah, very good. Well, that's breathed life into old equipment by swapping an old spinning drive out for an SSD.
Oh, I tell you, I mean, my Asus laptop upstairs, which is so old now, it's got an SSD, and I still can't justify getting rid of it. It's so fast.
It makes such a difference.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, I've noticed with similar spec machines, you put an SSD in it and it feels like a power machine compared to, you could, if you had an i3 or whatever, an i5, and just a spinning drive to it, and you swap it for an SSD, it makes such a difference.
Yeah, it's astonishing, really. It's one of those things that if you can change it, a spinning disk out, you definitely should, and not buy a new machine, because it's just the difference in speed. It's phenomenal.
Yeah, that's probably one of the things I would, if I ever need to upgrade my gaming laptop, because like I said, that's got an SSD and a spinning hard drive, I'd probably just swap out the spinning hard drive for another SSD, and that would give it a bit lease of life. Exactly.
I mean, that's what I did on my gaming rig here. I took out one of the spinning discs and put an SSD in to put games on, and it's transformed it. It's like a whole new machine.
Yeah, I think it's definitely worth doing. I was going to ask you about getting rid of old technology. Did you see that Edge, old Microsoft Edge, or Microsoft Edge Legacy, as it's called, that's being pulled from machines in April?
Yeah, I mean, I was going to ask Garry, what impact is that going to have for developers? I mean, are they actually pulling the Edge renderer out completely, or is it just a case of it'll be even harder to find it?
I think it's even harder to find it. I think you still can use the renderer, unless someone wants to correct me on that. But that's certainly what my understanding from a couple of conversations I've had. Which is, I mean, if that went away, that would be an issue for a lot of legacy stuff, because a lot of legacy stuff uses that engine. So I would be worried if that was the case, but not as far as I know.
Yeah, I mean, yesterday they did a similar thing where they mentioned that that they reminded everyone that the IE11 support from a whole bunch of Microsoft 365 apps was going to go away as well. But we're very keen to say that obviously, if you got apps that depend on IE, they'll still keep on working. So I presume the same must be the same for Legacy Edge, because as you say, Garry, there's a whole load of dev tools that depend on that rendering engine and that control.
Yeah, and shipping UWP apps.
Yes.
But as a developer, you can just you can swap out that control for the new version. But then I suppose you'd be a bit concerned that if the machine that you're going onto has got the new browser in. But that's the whole point of this update, isn't it? That's going in April, is it'll install the new version, just like 20H2 does when you install that.
Yeah, I mean, it's I just think it'll just make it harder to find. So yes, as Garry says, I think the rendering code is going to lurk behind somewhere. I mean, you can't just change the control over there because it's not completely compatible at all with the previous one. So I can't see it being a chop and change job. But I think for consumers, it just removes the confusion, I guess. I mean, I've been using Edge myself now for a couple of weeks, and it's working okay for me. I thought I'd try it again, you see, and it's working okay. Apart from the fact that every single Google site nags me to install Chrome, every single one, all the time.
Yeah. I just found the text on here. It says Edge HTML, the rendering engine for Microsoft Edge Legacy, will continue to be supported.
Yeah. I mean,
to develop apps for the new Microsoft Edge, use WebView 2.
I mean, that makes sense because it's on systems. In some ways, it's a little bit like the old legacy PowerShell stuff, in that it's on long-term support branches of Windows 10, so it's going to be around at least until those long-term support branches go away, and maybe beyond.
Yeah, but it is. You're right. It is good that it'll be swapped. Everybody will be on the same version then. The new Edge. I think anybody on 20H2 has already done that switch, but this just pushes it down to the older versions as well.
Yeah.
I use, well, like I said previously, I've used the new Edge for some time. I use it on all my machines. I do have Chrome installed on one machine, but I never use it. Never have any real need to use it. I use Edge Canary. And every now and again, there's issues with Edge Canary, but so I've got the stable one installed. But Edge Canary for a few days last week would crash when you got a dialog, authentication dialog box. So I've got some older servers that I go onto that have the Edge, the old user authentication dialog box, and it would just crash Edge completely. The stable one was fine, but they fixed that in the last couple of builds. So it's very rare you have to switch between them, but because everything's synced up as well, it's not really an issue anyway. So I'm using the new Edge on all my devices and on Android as well. So it works. It works great for me, and I use the authenticator to do the password synchronization as well. So on Android, on the Duo, the authenticator does the password filling in on Microsoft Edge on the phone, which works great, and it's also on the Samsung as well. So everything's tied together in one place now, so it works quite well for that. You can kind of use it as a password manager, the authenticator now, which is pretty good because you can get it to generate random passwords and then just sync it across devices.
Yeah.
I tell you what, I have been using. I thought, last week I mentioned about the 950. It was it wasn't working brilliantly. So quite a bit of tinkering around over the weekend, and I've got screen rotation working.
It's not working there.
No, it's not working now. Oh, there you go. Yeah, screen rotation working. But I've also got Edge working.
Oh, really? Is that the
yeah,
arm? Is that the arm builder edge or?
Yep, it's working on there. It's rotating around because I'm flicking it around. But yeah, it's working fine. All the inbox apps now work apart from the camera. SIM support, I've got that working, although I haven't got a SIM in here. But Wi-Fi is working as well. I said rotating. And I even got Miracast to work on it as well. Although Miracast will only work in portrait mode, won't work in landscape mode. But yeah, it's actually working surprisingly well. It's not the fastest, but it works. Yes, like I say, the inbox for apps works, and now the browser works. You can get just about anything working on there. So yeah, I was quite impressed. It is a nice way of heating your desk up, though. If you're in a cold office, it does get rather warm.
I was going to ask, what's the battery life like?
I don't know, because I leave it on charge most of the time. I would say it's about 2 or 3 hours, something like that. Yeah, through Action Center, you see I've got the cast buttons available and all that kind of thing. It works all right. I think it certainly 10x works well on seemingly old devices like this. So a lot of the apps don't work for it though. Like I tried, I mentioned Terminal last week. That didn't work because it's not for that platform. It says Garry suggested trying your phone, but that didn't work either.
No, that definitely won't work.
Yeah. So, but this is why I'm looking forward to trying it on a real machine. It's light for its, it runs well considering what it's on. So I'd really like to try it on some lightweight, some Chromebook type device, a low cost laptop, and just see what you can do with it. It certainly fulfill the needs for a lot of people. There's people using for Chromebooks. So yeah, I'm quite enjoying using it actually. I leave it on my desk and weather on here, and all the inbox, like I said, the weather, the maps, and everything else all works on here. The rotations, it's not the smoothest, but you can see it does that blur when it's doing the rotations. Now, if it was faster, it would actually look quite nice. That, and when you do side by side windows and things like that, you can see the nice animations in there. So, whereas Windows 10 is very looks the way that screens draw and when you drag things around looks pretty much as Windows has always done. There's a lot of work going into Windows 10X, I think. So I think when we see that when Microsoft show the proper version of it on proper hardware, I think it will look nice. How practical it is, I don't know, but it will look quite nice. So.
Excellent, that's good news.
We'll wait and see. Yeah, so I'm still looking forward to seeing that.
Well, there's 3 weeks to go until Ignite, so you never know. Perhaps there may be something appearing, then if not, it has to be built. Must be built.
Yep.
Although,
I'm guessing build.
Build is the place, isn't it, to get the developer when you're talking to developers? So I'm hoping that is the case. I'd like to see that. So, but my little 950 doing that 950 XL doing quite well on that. But I believe it works on the 950 as well. If you can spend the time on it, that. It seems this is amazing, the community building up around something that hasn't even been released yet.
Well, I think there's among the enthusiasts, there's a real sort of thirst for just something, anything. Please give us something.
Yeah, something new, something we want to. Yeah, something new to play with. I think that's the key thing. Isn't it? Now, what else do I want to talk about? We're still trying to arrange some retro computing type stories that we can talk about, and get some guests on. But Richard, you did have a story on something that's coming up soon.
Yeah, it's at the National Museum of Computing. That's at Bletchley Park, not to be confused with obviously the Bletchley Park Trust. They're two different things, but it's one of these closed museums that's got loads of retro gear inside it, ranging from like high-end mainframes, really ancient stuff, but also a whole load of home PCs and home computers, which you might recognise. I think as part of, because I think this year is the 40th anniversary of the BBC Micro, isn't it? I think it's 40 years. I think it was 81 when it first came out. Yeah, so as part of that, they're doing a Micro Olympics, which starts next week. And I think again, I was just visiting their website. I'm sure Ian will put a link in the show notes. But basically, obviously, it's all online because we're not allowed to meet anyone at the moment. But in some ways, that lends itself quite well to like a virtual Olympic event. And I think it's basically a case of you get a bunch of emulators, and then over 5 days, starting from next Monday, there's a different game per day. I think Monday is Chucky Egg. Remember Chucky Egg?
Oh, Chucky, I love Chucky.
There we go.
Yeah,
So I think that's highest score. Then there's Revs. Again, Revs. I'm sure you know. I'm sure you remember Revs, Ian.
Yeah. That was on the BBC Micro, wasn't it, Revs?
Yeah. Well, these are all BBC games. So I think it's like the time of a 10-10 laps.
Yeah.
Then Wednesday's Citadel. Thursday's Repton. Friday, Elite. So that'll be a long day.
That will be a long day.
Yeah.
So I mean, they actually run a classroom of 18 BBC micros, but of course, no one's allowed in there at the moment. So it's what I think that the plan is: you're going to submit your results each day, but then be a grand total, and then I think whoever wins the grand total, they're going to give you some prizes, I imagine, from the gift shop.
Fantastic.
But yeah, just looking down, it just seemed like a really fun thing, because obviously, I think most of us got to start with either like BBC Micros or Spectrums or Commodores or things, or TI 99s back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
And so it just it really appealed to me. So I may well have a go at this myself. My appalling attempts are going to probably be on there as well at some point next week. But I recommend you do too, Ian, and we'll see who wins.
Yeah. Send us the link when you're going on that. I guess we can see how you do on that.
Yeah. So it's quite cool.
Yeah, I mean this year's got an interesting year actually, because the ZX81 anniversary is in March.
Yep.
Which I think we'll have to try and tie something in with that, because I think that would be a good one, because that's really what got me started. Although I played with a ZX80 at school, it was a ZX81 that my grandparents bought me for Christmas. So it must have been Christmas 81, I guess. And that was just, it's very hard to describe to anybody who wasn't from that generation, just the excitement of having this device, this home computer that, we take it for granted now. Everyone's got computers and tablets and phones and everything else. But to get this for me as a young kid, getting this ZX81 with all the manuals that came in. I mean, if you remember, they came with manuals and the full basic language guide was in there and everything.
Was it the 81 though, that when you press the key on I call it a key keyboard, the membrane? Did the screen blank each time? Yes, I remember that. Yes.
Well, that was a ZX80, not the 81.
Was the 80? Okay.
The 80 was cool.
Yeah, because they had it. The 80 was the reason for that was because there was no video RAM, wasn't it? Something like that.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that was fun.
The ZX81 had two modes in it as well. It had slow and fast. You could type fast and you could put it into fast mode, where it swapped out the video RAM, so that it did the same.
Right.
The ZX80. Yeah, I love my ZX80. Like I said, ZX81. Yeah, I loved it. It was a start of something, just so interesting. And I got a RAM pack with the blue tack on the back,
compulsory blue tack. Yep. And then a bit of blue tack just to keep that power lead in place as well. It's all a bit.
Yeah. And I spent many an hour typing in games listings from Sinclair User or whatever magazine it was, because games were expensive. So if there was a game in a magazine and you could get a magazine, then that's what I would do. I'd type those in, and they hardly ever worked, but my copy and typing skills were always probably the best. But and usually they missed a page out or something like that, and they had to put a correction in the following month.
Yeah.
Yes.
Back then, I was publishing things in those magazines.
Well, maybe in one of your programs, Gary, that I mistyped.
Mistyped, probably.
Yeah, I used to have so much fun doing all that, and it must have been. We did look back at it. My parents, it must have been a completely alien thing that I was doing. It must be so difficult to understand. Why you'd want to sit because I remember sitting at the dining room table with a black and white TV, typing this thing in, and they must have just said, "What is he doing with this?" Because it was a start of something very exciting. So it's a bit like when the Raspberry Pi, I guess, that kind of brought back that enthusiasm.
Yes, I think certainly the when I first saw the Pi 400, the first thing I thought was, I remember similar sort of price 40 years ago, getting the box to contain the keyboard that you plug into the screen, and it's like it's the same thing again.
Yeah. And like I mentioned, those manuals are fantastic. I mean, I had every keyword in the manuals. And I remember, flicking through because I started to make my own programs, and you'd flick through to find out, what the syntax was. And of course, now you just Google the code.
Yeah, but then you need the tips for where to poke and peek things. Because it's like, basic will get you so far, but you'd have to do a little bit of hanky panky with the poking to actually to get the best out of the hardware.
Yeah, and I think maybe with that March one, we'll try and do a bit more remedies. But my favourite game definitely was 3D Monster Maze, which is predates Doom by some while, but it was that 3D effect, and on a ZX81.
Yeah, so I would say the movement was perhaps less than slick though. So I'm just going to wait for the balls to be drawn. Here we go, and they're drawn. Yeah. Right.
Yeah,
it's not frames per second, frames per hour.
That's right. But as immersive as experience as playing it on a headset, for a kid at the time, yeah, fantastic.
Absolutely super. I mean, I still enjoy playing the Tunnels of Doom on my TI-99. Just again the same sort of thing, just really badly rendered corridors with monsters in them. And it's always a monster. It's really scary. And yeah, it was brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, so I'm going to dig my 81 out, I think, for next month, and we'll have to look at that. I think because you get into that period of time, aren't you, in that early 80s, so it's going to be the 40th anniversary for a lot of things coming up. I don't know when the TI-99 was, a couple of years later, was it 82?
Oh no, it's been and gone. That first appeared, I think, in 79, I think.
So there was a lot of stuff out before those Sinclair stuff.
Yeah. I mean, Sinclair stuff was actually, in many ways, it was quite late to the game, really.
It was, yeah.
I mean, Spectrum was 82 because it was going to be called the ZX82, wasn't it? I think the Spectrum initially.
Yeah, it was, yeah.
But before, I mean, the TI, the 994, I think, came out in 77, 78, and then the 4A came out, I think, in 81, 80 or 81, I think. And then obviously got canned. It got canned in 83, I think. I think 83 is when TI pulled the plug.
I'm just looking on Wikipedia for BBC Micro. It says release date was the 1st of December 81.
Yes, it's 40 years this year.
Yeah, and then it says discontinued 1994.
Yeah, I can believe it. Yeah.
7 years.
Yeah. I mean, I would have been writing code for things like the Atari 400, which came out in 78, I think.
Yeah. I mean, wasn't the Atari 400 basically 2600 with a keyboard or something?
Yeah,
like that?
It kind of was. I mean, it was a game cartridge. It had the games cartridge in it. It had its own game cartridge. They weren't 2600 compatible. It was basically, I think it was going to be a games machine, sort of the step up, and then they decided the personal computer market was starting to come in. Commodore PET was starting to take off and things like that. Because that had a membrane keyboard as well, which used to break all the time.
Although that said, I mean, you thought the Atari 400 keyboard was bad, and then you saw the ZX80 keyboard and you thought, it's not that bad, really, is it? Actually?
Not at all. Yeah.
I remember my friend had a Commodore PET, which it was his dad's from work, and he must have been getting rid of it. It was the one with the square keys rather than the proper keyboard.
Oh yeah, they're great now.
Mm.
Yeah, I remember we've seen it at some of the museums that we've been to, but just playing around with these things was amazing. It was it was just like another world.
Yeah, and of course the Commodore PET had just the most impossibly futuristic case, wasn't it? It was like it was like it looks like something out of art, a Kubrick film. It's fantastic.
And advertised by the Osmonds. What could you ask? I just remember the Atari 400 actually when I first saw that, and you switched it on, and the only thing it loaded into was Notepad. See, Notepad's been around a very long time.
Yeah, absolutely. And you think that really Microsoft got started, didn't it, with the Basic? Microsoft Basic was massive, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, it's huge. Yeah, Basic. Yeah, it's just and again, I think what's interesting about Basic and a lot of the early Microsoft stuff is, of course, they were the cross-platform company. Microsoft Basic and Microsoft Multiplayer were everywhere. They just they had this wonderful portable format that allowed them to sort of port their stuff all over the place. I think it's interesting to see them almost going back that way now, really.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? Yeah, Microsoft Basic. I think that's what that the Dragon ran Microsoft Basic, isn't it? It was where everybody had their own flavor of Basic as well, which made it even more interesting.
Yeah, that was good. Good old days.
Well, yes, yeah. I mean, I always found it frustrating that of course, you had your pokes and your peaks on your Spectrum. On my TI 99, it was call load, which just baffled everyone.
Yeah.
But no, I think it makes sense. Call load, address, value makes perfect sense.
It does. That absolutely did.
And of course, the thing that went hand in hand this was the computer shops that sprung up like in Boots. People think of, if any younger listeners will think of Boots as in the UK, the Boots stores as a chemist and selling perfume and things like that. But they had a fantastic computer section. You could go, there were walls of games, didn't they, in there? And you could go in and type rude things on the computer that was in there, as everybody did.
Yes, print hello, semicolon, go to 10. That's the one, yeah. Yes, or WX Smiths. I mean, I think most people probably got their first taste of computer in the WX Smiths, which of course now is a newsagents and a bookshop. But then, again, had walls of systems, spectrums and stuff. You'd see your 16K Spectrum, your 48K Spectrum. Oh, it was so exciting. I've got all nostalgic now.
Well, it was either that or you'd have gone to Dixon's or Curry.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
I guess my ZX81 came from K's catalogue. I think it would have been.
Oh yeah.
Because that's what my grandma was one of those pre-internet, wasn't it? So you flick through the catalogue and allow 28 days for delivery, and then get your ZX81 through there. Yeah, a different world now.
It was a different world.
Well, I think it's a world that even Optimum and the Raspberry Pi Foundation and their ilk are trying to recapture, trying to get that excitement back, which I think they're semi-succeeding. Obviously, it's not quite there yet, but it's not quite the same yet. But I certainly think the likes of the Pi 400 and its ilk may well excite people again. All that said, it's not quite an Xbox or a PS5, is it?
Yeah, I think there's something more immediate about them. This week I've been, because I've changed monitors around, so I've got a nice big monitor there. So I've got my old monitor over to the one side, which wasn't doing very much. So I plugged my Raspberry Pi into it, and I was installing Miracast software. So I've been playing with that this week and getting there. I've not got it working yet, but because I wanted to do then is project one of the other laptops to that screen. But it's great fun being able to tinker around, and you can find almost anything you want for the Raspberry Pi. You can probably find it somewhere. Somebody's got the source code on a GitHub or something like that, and you can download it. And so that's why I was compiling applications to try and get this Miracast to work. But it's great. It is. There's something very immediate about it, that you can do this kind of stuff.
Definitely, yeah.
So when I get it working, what I basically wanted to do was to make a Chromecast without using a Chromecast dongle. I have got one, but that doesn't. That just works. And what's the point of that?
It's far too simple.
As previously mentioned on the show, there is just because you can. That's why I do it.
So, Richard, how's your car going?
Oh yeah, okay. Wow, that's a good gear change. Yeah. So my car. I've got a rule about cars, and that is that once they cost more than a certain amount of money to keep going each year, it's time to get rid of the car. And sadly, my current car has suddenly decided that it's going to become very expensive, which means it's time to get rid of it. And so we've talked about electric cars before, Gary. So I was going to ask you, because things are changing so fast in the electric car world at the moment.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. What's a decent sort of family electric car to go for that's probably going to not cost more than £40,000 and do about 250 miles on a charge?
Yeah, so 250 miles on charge. I'd argue you can get away with less than that, but let's go for 250. So you need, if you're going to look at ranges on electric cars, obviously WLTP is the rating they use, which is a bit. It's optimum charging and optimum charges and things like that.
I'm thinking aircon on, headlights on, that kind of thing.
Yeah. So real world, you're talking you need a car which is going to have about 280 to 300 miles WLTP to get round about 250 real world. And at the moment you've got a few choices. I mean, there's the VW ID3, which can do well over that. The stalwarts, which have been out for a while now, the Kia e-Niro, which is a really nice car, quite sizable, a lot of stuff. The Hyundai Kona, which is just a sister car but slightly smaller. Kia Soul, which will do just about that. It's not quite there. And then you've got something like the Ford Mustang, which is just within the price bracket.
Ford Mustang.
Yeah.
Now you're talking. Tell me more.
This is the Mustang Marquee, which is it's basically it's a bit like the I-Pace. It's a sporty hatch. big. It's not really an SUV. It's definitely a crossover. But the base price of that is just under 40k. So and that's got a reasonably long range. I mean, they have I think the main long range model is 380 miles of range. And you get 0 to 60 in 3.7 seconds and all sorts of things. So available pre-ordered at the moment, but out this year. So that's definitely an option. I think there's supposed to be a cheaper version of the Polestar 2, which is the Volvo's assisted electric brand, coming out. And then later this year, we've got a whole raft of new EVs coming out. The Hyundai's Ioniq range, so they've had a car called the Ioniq for some time, but they're actually doing a range called the Ioniq range, and there's 4 or 5 cars coming out in that, which will have pretty long ranges on them. And also the whole VW side of things. So you obviously mentioned ID3, but the Sietzka version of that's coming out. You have the Skoda version of it as well. So there'll be a lot of choice on that latter part of this year. But yes, certainly there are quite a few cars now under that magical threshold.
Okay, that's interesting, because I mean, obviously one can't go and look at cars yet because we're obviously all locked down still. But certainly come March, April time, if things lift a bit, then I should be out and about looking.
Yeah, I mean, you can quite easily price up the Marquee to substantially more than that range. But it's got a good tech, and I believe it's maybe I'm not going, because Ford have announced they're going adapting Android Auto. I'm not sure if the Mustang Marquee has that as its main driver, but you've always got CarPlay in there anyway. So yeah, but it's a nice looking car actually. I was quite impressed with it so far. Looking what I see, but yeah, there's a lot out there. I mean, I certainly also would definitely recommend the Hyundai and the Kia. I know a lot of people driving them, very happy with them. Good quality cars. So lots of choice now. And of course, the one thing I would say about electric cars is if they go wrong, they tend to go wrong in the first year, and that's always covered by warranty. But then they just keep going and going and going and going and going, and the minimal servicing, and there's very few parts to go wrong in them.
Well, yes. In the case of my car, it's face the turbo's gone, the exhaust gas valve regulator's gone. So all the things don't feature on electric cars.
Yeah,
no.
You don't. No gearboxes. No. Well, there is a gearbox. There's not a gearbox in terms of just something you change gear on. But yeah, and obviously you can charge at home. All the functional, the nice things about it. Well, you possibly can't charge at home, but there are options. I mean, we've just got a new Lidl just opened up near us, and that's got two new chargers on it, which are really cheap. So there's lots of options for charging, even if you haven't got the ability to home charge. Well,
luckily I do now, because I'm fortunate to have a house that's got a sort of off-street parking. So
yeah, so you'll be fine then. Yeah. So I mean, and that's the ultimate. When you've got that's the concept people struggle with. The fact that you don't go to fill up. You wake up in the morning and you've got a full car. And off you go, and then you come back the night and you top it up, and you're not fully charging every day. That's the other thing people don't get. Most people do 30-40 miles in a day maximum, and that only takes an hour or so to charge up. So it's not yes, you do sometimes need that extra range, but most of the times you can get away with shorter ranges.
Yes, well, I mean, what I did towards the end of last year was kind of measure what's the worst case scenario in one day, as leaving this house and coming back to the house. What's the worst trip? And the worst trip tended to be a journey to West London, where my parents-in-law live, and then around there and then back again. That came to about 180 miles all told. I thought that start and end in one day. Yeah, so if you get a car that can do more than that, then that should be fine.
Yeah, absolutely, and there's lots of, I mean, there's loads of cars around the 200 miles range, which I to be honest, I think is about the right optimum range, because it's a good trade-off between the time it will take to fully charge it, and as opposed to the journey time you have. I mean, there's been a couple of really interesting videos done over the past where a short range car has been raced against a longer range car, and the short range car has actually won the competition because it's actually spent less time charging, although it's had to charge more often, because it's quicker to charge a shorter range car usually. Yeah, it's just one of those things. But yeah, I
can be seeing similar things when they picture a little tiny diesel car against a rorty snorty petrol car, and the diesel car would always win because it never filled up.
Yeah, that's the way a lot of it goes on these things. I mean, it's getting better all the time anyway on the range. And the other thing you have to watch with these things, it's not just the range, it's the speed of charging you'll need to look. So you need to look for how fast they can actually charge, what's the highest kilowatts they can take as a peak charge rate. A lot of old cars used to only be able to take 50 to 60. Mine, for example, take just over 100 kilowatts. The more modern cars will take 150, and that makes a big difference to how quickly you can charge up when you actually do have to stop.
Brilliant. Well, thank you, Garry.
So, Richard, what we need to do then, you need to update us each week on how your search is progressing.
I will. I'll let you know. What's leading the pack. But yes, I'm quite intrigued by a Mustang.
Yeah, nice. Well,
and you know why? It's because I always wanted a Capri. You see, so
I do actually think this is the natural successor for the Capri, although it's obviously completely different starting. It's just got that feeling of it.
And we're back to the 80s once again.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, well, I'm gonna go and dig out my ZX81 from the loft now. I think that's my next job.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So, Richard, where can we find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Richard_Speed.
And Garry, where can we find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Garry with 2 R's WMA. See me answering questions, asking Lightwave RF questions about why people are having problems with their accounts. Sort of mouthful.
Well, I'm at iFix on Twitter, so we'll be back next week, so we'll see you then.
Excellent.
Sure, yeah.